Let us continue our lecture. So yesterday we created another activity in our application and we used intents to transfer data from one activity to another activity. First we transferred the data from the parent activity to the child activity, and then we transferred some data from the child activity to the parent activity. We did this using intent extras and using some function calls that are defined by Android. Today, let's go back to the same application and try to transfer some meaningful data. For example, we will transfer the index number of our question. We will see the answer of that question in our child activity, and then we will transfer back that the person has cheated to the parent activity, and based on that we will do a toast that indicates it. So we are going to make some more changes to our math quiz applications using the knowledge that we learned yesterday. Let us see. So this is our yesterday's code. Just to quickly revise, we now have 3 activities in our program. You can check it by looking at the manifest. Let me also add a label for our another activity. So I will call it Android label equal to cheat. That is it. This is fine. And now our new Android activity should display cheat on the top as a label. So let us first quickly have a revision of what our application was doing. We run our application, we start the emulator. We have added good number of log messages to check the Android application or activity lifecycle. Now let's just quickly have one execution and then we will move on to do some meaningful changes to make our math quiz applications more interesting. Okay, our application is about to start and now it has started. As we can see the log, we are currently in quiz activity. Did user cheat is false. I can answer. I can go to next. Everything is fine. You can go to hint. You can see the hint. You can come back. I have still not cheated, though I did go into the heap as shown on the console. Now let me cheat. There is nothing, but our label is now changed, which we just did in the manifest. And now we come back and this time we are saying that the user has cheated. That is all very good. Now we are going to actually add few functionalities in our cheat activity. So number one, let us first see where is the XML of our cheat. Some of you have mentioned that you get rendering problems when you're writing your code. I usually press this refresh button and all my rendering problem goes away, just as you saw it. So in case you face a rendering problem, please try to make use of the refresh button. Okay, so this is our layout of our cheat activity. I will make few changes. Number one, as usual, I will make it a linear layout. And then it looks all good. Let us start adding some code into the XML file of our cheat activity. As you can see that now the label is cheat, which we changed in the manifest. In the text, we have a simple text. I have already converted the relative layout, which is done by default, to the linear layout. And now I am going to add few more things. Number one, I want to add a text view. So let me just add a text view. Wrap content is good for me. I'll do some padding. Some of you have also asked the question that how much should be the padding. So I usually decide padding depending on how it looks on a screen. Usually a 24 dp padding is good enough in most of the situations. However, no hard and fast rules are there. You can use a padding which looks good. Now, what do I want to do? Number one, I want to give you a warning that you are going to cheat, and this is not a good practice. Cheat warning text. We will create the associated string resource later on. Let the error be there for the time being. Another text view I will add, and here I would like to show the cheat, that is to give the answer that whether the number is prime or not. I will again use same padding of 24 dp, which looks very good on my device. Now there is something new that I am going to use here. I am going to use something called tools text equal to answer, or actually you can say anything. Now for using the tools text, we already have the namespace defined, we already have the context defined. So what does the tools text do for you? Let us go into the design and see. Again, we are having some rendering problem. Okay, I think I will have to first fix it, then only I can show it to you. So let us see and go to the values, the strings, and I would say here I'm first going to name cheat warning text. You are about to cheat. This is a good enough warning. Because I will be adding a button, I will add the string resource here while I am working on this. Oops, I made a mistake. Cheat. And I will call it a show cheat button. I will give it value show cheat. Okay, so these two are sufficient for me. Now let's go back to our layout file. My errors are gone. Let us see the design. What it is showing is that you are about to cheat, and it's showing answer. Now, if I run the application, I actually will not see the answer, and that's the whole purpose of the tools text field. This is showing me that how it will look without actually displaying it till I run the application. So at the time of the application, this will go away, and ideally my answer will come here. So the value answer is only a placeholder. If I had not used tools text, then I would be getting a fixed text, something like this, which I cannot change. Okay, or which I would not like to change. Fine, let us continue. And because we will be changing the text, we need to create an ID for this. So as usual, we will now create an ID /ID, and we will call it a name, cheat answer text view. That is fine. I was seeing the text on the very top. Let me bring it down near to the center. I will have to add a gravity equal to center. Let me just show you what happens if you just add this line. You see that now it has come from the top to the center. And while I am at it, I will also add the orientation to vertical. Let's see what changes it makes. Yes, so now it is showing my fields in a vertical layout, my view objects in a vertical layout. That is the warning text, and that's how my answer will appear. This is all good, except that I would also like to add a button. So let me add a button. When wrap content is good enough, and I will add a text equal to, we already created a string. Hopefully we should get cheat button, show cheat button. Okay, so this was our button that we wanted to create, and because we will be using this button in our program, we also need to create the ID for it. Colon equal to, now you must have understood that whatever resource we want to use actively in our program, we need to create an ID for it. So what would be the ID called? Let us call it a show cheat. Show cheat button. So we have a show cheat button, and we have a string resource. That's all fine. Now when I click on the design, I should see a button. That's very good. Okay, so now the layout of our cheat file is complete. I may want to just check how it looks in landscape, and this is fine with me. So I will not be creating a separate landscape file for it. Okay, so now let's go back and make some changes to pass the right value. In our previous lectures, for testing our concept, we just tried to pass any value. Today we will specifically pass the value of this variable, because this is the variable which is showing our result, right? So where are we using this value? As you can see that we will be using this value to display our toast. So that is when a user was pressing true or false button, we were calling check answer, and in check answer we were using the value, and from this value we were showing the toast. Now let's pass this value. Let me copy it. Control C. Let me go to the quiz activity where we were trying to create the intent. So we did the intent when we were at the cheat button. So number one thing is that in our cheat activity extra we did a int. So I will now remove this int and I will call it boolean b. Okay, I'll make it b. That is fine. I will now come back to quiz activity and I will just have a boolean b equal to is true answer and I will pass this b here. Okay, so now I have successfully passed the boolean. Let me remove the statements because now you already understand the program very well. So now we are passing the boolean value. Now let's go to the cheat activity and try to see what changes we need to do. One change which was needed earlier we have already done. So the another change that we need to do is to change this string index to reflect what we are putting now, because we are no longer putting the cheat index. So let me change it to, let us say, answer is true. When you are developing an app just for yourself, you need not to worry about it. However, if you want to deploy app on the Play Store, you need to make sure that the values that can be used are unique. Why? Because as we know in Android that any application can start activity from another application. There is a good possibility that another application may want to store some values and may want to use a commonly defined name. Now hint, cheat, these are very common names. So let us try to make it slightly complicated so that we can ensure that it is more likely to be unique. One way of doing it is to use the package definition here. So I would just call it whatever is my package in.ac.ttt dot psync dot math quiz dot answer is true. Now I am fairly sure that nobody will like to guess and end up with the same string. So this is one way of trying to ensure that you are using unique key values. Now let's just use our new key value. So one required change we have done, that is we are now passing the extra, which is a boolean, and we are accessing that extra here. Now let's look at some other changes. Just because we made that changes, we will also have to make change in the onCreate function. So because last time we were accessing an int using this, now we are accessing a boolean. So let me do get boolean extra, and we know our string answer is true. Let's say the default value is false. We'll have to assign it to a boolean b, or the better thing is to assign to this variable is cheated directly. So now we have a is cheated. We can also safely remove this log message now. So yes, and we will have to also remove this message. So we have done some basic required changes. Now we have to make more changes to display the result when a person presses the cheat button. So let's go back to on create. We are here. We have to enable the text view. So, well, first we will have to describe a variable to hold the text view. So let us say private text view answer or cheat answer text view, and similarly private button show cheat button. I will press Alt Enter to make sure that I am importing the correct libraries. Now if we'll go down, and I will say cheat answer text view equal to text view, and then we can use our familiar method find view by id r.id dot cheat answer text view. Similarly, we can show for our button show cheat button equal to button find view by id r.id dot show cheat button. That is fine. Now the next step is, as you all know, to set our listener. Show cheat button dot set on click listener new view dot on click listener start a new method, do an override, and then override the public void on click view method. Okay, so this is the method which will get invoked when we press the cheat button. Now what do we want to show as the cheat button is? Number one we want to show is the value that we obtained here. Answer is true. And answer is true from here, right? Now let us see. Okay, so now let us add some functionality to the on click. I would say if is cheated, that is if is cheated is true, my text view, which is mCheatAnswer.text view, should display true, otherwise it should display false. Now we already have created string resources with respect to true and false when we were creating our buttons. So let us just use them. r.string.true button and else mCheatAnswer.setText r.string.false button. You can check the value of true button and false button, so we will get true and false. Now let's come back. We seems to have done enough to display true or false when the cheat button is pressed. Let us quickly see an execution. Our emulator is launched. We know the answer of this question. Let's press the cheat button. It shows our message. This space is empty because we were using tools :text. Now I press the show cheat button and the answer is displayed. We go back. We know that we have cheated. Now let's go to next question, to the last question. We again press the cheat button and the correct answer is displayed. So we have completed a good number of functionality as far as going from parent activity to cheat activity was concerned. We are now going to fix the reverse path. That is, now when the user has cheated, we are going to display a different toast. Earlier we were displaying a toast which was only saying correct or incorrect. Now we will display a toast which will say that the user has cheated. Okay, now let us fix the reverse path. Earlier we were calling this method setAnswerResult, in which we are doing this. Number one, we will call this method only when is cheated is pressed, and instead of taking that value we will say is cheated. Because the user pressed the button, we know that he has cheated, and that's why we are passing the value true. And we are passing this value true and we are putting it in is cheated, and the static function that quiz activity will call was cheat shown will be either taken from here, that is true. Otherwise, if this is not set, then it will be taken as false. That will solve our purpose, right? So now let us go into the quiz activity and change our toast. First, let's go to our string resources. Initially, we were showing the toast as correct or incorrect. Let me add another toast which says string. I will call it cheat toast, and I will say you have cheated. Try to solve it yourself. Solve it next time. Or maybe just you have cheated. So this is our cheat toast. We created the resource. We go to quiz activity, and now when the user presses the true or false button, that is, when the user presses the true or false button here, we want to show either true or false or the cheat toast. So let us do our check answer. So in our check answer, we check this variable and we show the correct or incorrect toast. The only thing we need to change in the check answer is that if the user is doing a cheating, then the message res ID is set to the text of the cheat toast. So in order to do this, I will first go to the method where we are receiving the result, the on activity result. Earlier we had set this code inside the activity result. We can now remove the log message. We are already setting the mCheated variable. So this time we will just say that in the check answer, we will say if if am cheated, then message res id equal to dot cheat toast, else the remaining code, and then I make the toast. We hope that we have done everything correctly. And now if we run the application, unless we cheat, it should display us the correct and incorrect toast, but when we cheat, it should display us the cheat toast. Let us run our application. We are running our application and we will see how it behaves now. It's 19. I press true without cheating. I get the correct answer. Go to next. I cheat. I get the correct cheated answer. I go back. I press it and it says you have cheated. Do you think we have done everything correct? Think about it. Okay, let's now go to the next question. This time we will not cheat and try to answer it. Oops, we are still saying the wrong message, which is that we have cheated while we have not. So yes, we have left one small detail in our program. Let us fix it. What all we need to do is that when we press next button, we reset the am cheated to false. Now let's run our program again. So we have not cheated, it is correct. We cheat, come back, it is correct. We go to next, we don't cheat, it is again correct. Now one more thing is left to test. We go to next, we press cheat, but we don't press the show cheat button. We come back and we give the answer and it is still correct. So now our application is working correctly. We have added one activity in our lectures. I have already added one more activity. So this is an application which has two activities besides the main activity. So in this lecture, through this program, you have learned how to use intents to communicate between two activities. Now let's go back to our basics and run through this presentation to cement what we have learned. You have already learned all the concepts, so let me revise. Intent is a message object that a component can use to communicate with the OS. Four major components: activity, background receivers, services, content providers. And intents are used mainly as a multi-purpose communication tool. Like we saw, we use an intent to pass the data to the child activity, and then we used an intent to pass the result from the child activity to the parent activity. This is how intent and activity work roughly. Your application, Android OS, your application calls start activity. It goes to the Android OS activity manager, which then starts another activity. For our particular case, something like this was happening. We were doing quiz activity, we were calling start activity, we were passing an intent of the component cheat activity. The Android OS activity manager was then starting our cheat activity. Now, there are two types of intents. One is an explicit intent and one is an implicit intent. An explicit intent is when you create an intent with a context and a class object. like the way that we created in our program. We gave a context which was most likely quiz activity.this, and then we gave a class which was the class file of the new activity that we wanted to start. There are also implicit intents which are used when an activity in your application wants to start an activity in another application. So far we have not covered this part. So we will leave the discussion for our future lectures. Whatever we have been using was explicit intent. So this is what normally happens when you pass data between two intents. Now, we also used intent extras for passing data from one activity to another activity. That is when we want to do beyond just starting another activity. As you saw that the extras were key value pairs, and we used them using method called getExtra and putExtra. So yes, initially here is a good flowchart. Quiz activity starts activity for result, pass an intent with an extra to Android OS activity manager, which uses the intent to start a new activity. The new activity then creates another intent and uses an extra, calls Android OS, which is then uses this to pass the result back to the quiz activity, the parent activity. And parent activity can access these results by calling the method onActivityResult. This is all for your lecture. In these two lectures, we have learned how to create multiple activities in an application and how do we use intent to communicate between these two activities. Thank you.